Chapter 23 of The Iron Heel by Jack London. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Matt Saw. The People of the Abyss. Suddenly, a change came over the face of things. A tingle of excitement ran along the air. Automobiles fled past, 2, 3, a dozen, and from them warnings were shouted to us. One of the machines swerved wildly at high speed half a block down, and the next moment, already left well behind it, the pavement was torn into a great hole by a bursting bomb. We saw the police disappearing down the cross streets on the run, and knew that something terrible was coming. We could hear the rising roar of it. "Our brave comrades are coming," Hartman said. We could see the front of their column filling the street from gutter to gutter as the last war automobile fled past. The machine stopped for a moment just abreast of us. A soldier leapt from it, carrying something carefully in his hands. This, with the same care, he deposited in the gutter. Then he leapt back to his seat, and the machine dashed on, took the turn at the corner, and was gone from sight. Hartman ran to the gutter and stooped over the object. "Keep back," he warned me. I could see he was working rapidly with his hands. When he returned to me, the sweat was heavy on his forehead. "I disconnected it," he said, "and just in the nick of time. The soldier was clumsy. He intended it for our comrades, but he didn't give it enough time. It would have exploded prematurely. Now it won't explode at all." Everything was happening rapidly now. Across the street and half a block down, high up in a building, I could see heads peering out. I had just pointed them out to Hartman when a sheet of flame and smoke ran along that portion of the face of the building where the heads had appeared, and the air was shaken by the explosion. In places, the stone facing of the building was torn away, exposing the iron construction beneath. The next moment, similar sheets of flame and smoke smote the front of the building across the street opposite it. Between the explosions, we could hear the rattle of the automatic pistols and rifles. For several minutes, this mid-air battle continued, then died out. It was patent that our comrades were in one building, that mercenaries were in the other, and that they were fighting across the street. But we could not tell which was which building contained our comrades, and which the mercenaries. By this time, the column on the street was almost on us. As the front of it passed under the warring buildings, both went into action again, one building dropping bombs into the street, being attacked from across the street, and in return replying to that attack. Thus we learned which building was held by our comrades, and they did good work, saving those in the street from the bombs of the enemy. Hartman gripped my arm and dragged me into a wide entrance. "They're not our comrades!" he shouted in my ear. The inner doors to the entrance were locked and bolted. We could not escape. The next moment the front of the column went by. It was not a column, but a mob, an awful river that filled the street, the people of the abyss, mad with drink and wrong, up at last and roaring for the blood of their masters. I had seen the people of the abyss before, gone through its ghettos, and thought I knew it. But I found that I was now looking on it for the first time. Dumb apathy had vanished. It was now dynamic, a fascinating spectacle of dread. It surged past my vision in concrete waves of wrath, snarling and growling, carnivorous, drunk with whiskey from pillaged warehouses, drunk with hatred, drunk with lust for blood. Men, women, and children in rags and tatters. Dim, ferocious intelligences, with all the godlike blotted from their features, and all the fiendlike stamped in. Apes and tigers, anemic consumptives, and great hairy beasts of burden, wan faces from which vampire society had sucked the juice of life, bloated forms swollen with physical grossness and corruption, withered hags and death's heads bearded like patriarchs, festering youth and festering age, faces of fiends, crooked, twisted, misshapen monsters, blasted with the ravages of disease and all the horrors of chronic innutrition, the refuse and the scum of life, a raging, screaming, screeching, demoniacal horde. And why not? The people of the abyss had nothing to lose but the misery and pain of living. And to gain? Nothing, save one final, awful glut of vengeance. And as I looked, the thought came to me that in that rushing stream of human lava were men, comrades and heroes, whose mission had been to rouse the abysmal beast and to keep the enemy occupied in coping with it. And now a strange thing happened to me. A transformation came over me. The fear of death, for myself and for others, left me. I was strangely exalted, another being in another life. Nothing mattered. The cause for this one time was lost, but the cause would be here tomorrow, the same cause ever fresh and ever burning. And thereafter, in the orgy of horror that raged through the succeeding hours, I was able to take a calm interest. Death meant nothing. Life meant nothing. I was an interested spectator of events, and, sometimes swept on by the rush, was myself a curious participant. For my mind had leapt to a star-cool altitude and grasped a passionless transvaluation of values. Had it not done this, I know that I should have died. Half a mile of the mob had swept by when we were discovered. A woman in fantastic rags, with cheeks cavernously hollow and with narrow black eyes like burning gimlets, caught a glimpse of Hartman and me. She let out a shrill shriek and bore in upon us. A section of the mob tore itself loose and surged in after her. I can see her now, as I write these lines, a leap in advance, her gray hair flying in thin, tangled strings, the blood dripping down her forehead from some wound in the scalp. In her right hand a hatchet, her left hand, lean and wrinkled, a yellow talon, gripping the air convulsively. Hartman sprang in front of me. This was no time for explanations. We were well dressed, and that was enough. His fist shot out, striking the woman between her burning eyes. The impact of the blow drove her backward, but she struck the wall of her oncoming fellows and bounced forward again, dazed and helpless, the brandished hatchet falling feebly on Hartman's shoulder. The next moment I knew not what was happening. I was overborne by the crowd. The confined space was filled with shrieks and yells and curses. Blows were falling on me. Hands were ripping and tearing at my flesh and garments. I felt that I was being torn to pieces. I was being borne down, suffocated. Some strong hand gripped my shoulder in the thick of the press and was dragging fiercely at me. Between pain and pressure, I fainted. Hartman never came out of that entrance. He had shielded me and received the first brunt of the attack. This had saved me, for the jam had quickly become too dense for anything more than the mad gripping and tearing of hands. I came to in the midst of wild movement. All about me was the same movement. I had been caught up in a monstrous flood that was sweeping me I knew not whither. Fresh air was on my cheek and biting sweetly in my lungs. Faint and dizzy, I was vaguely aware of a strong arm around my body under the arms and half lifting me and dragging me along. Feebly, my own limbs were helping me. In front of me, I could see the moving back of a man's coat. It had been slit from top to bottom along the center seam, and it pulsed rhythmically, the slit opening and closing regularly with every leap of the wearer. This phenomenon fascinated me for a time, while my senses were coming back to me. Next, I became aware of stinging cheeks and nose and could feel blood dripping on my face. My hat was gone. My hair was down and flying, and from the stinging of the scalp I managed to recollect a hand in the press of the entrance that had torn at my hair. My chest and arms were bruised and aching in a score of places. My brain grew clearer, and I turned as I ran and looked at the man who was holding me up. He it was who had dragged me out and saved me. He noticed my movement. "It's all right," he shouted hoarsely. "I knew you on the instant." I failed to recognize him, but before I could speak, I trod upon something that was alive and that squirmed under my foot. I was swept on by those behind and could not look down and see, and yet I knew that it was a woman who had fallen and who was being trampled into the pavement by thousands of successive feet. "It's all right," he repeated. "I'm Garthwaite." He was bearded and gaunt and dirty, but I succeeded in remembering him as the stalwart youth that had spent several months in our Glen Ellen refuge 3 years before. He passed me the signals of the Iron Heel's Secret Service, in token that he, too, was in its employ. "I'll get you out of this as soon as I can get a chance," he assured me. "But watch your footing. On your life, don't stumble and go down." All things happened abruptly on that day, and with an abruptness that was sickening, the mob checked itself. It came in violent collision with a large woman in front of me. The man with the split coat had vanished, while those behind collided against me. A devilish pandemonium reigned, shrieks, curses, and cries of death, while above all rose the churning rattle of machine guns and the putter-putt, putter-putt of rifles. At first I could make out nothing. People were falling about me right and left. The woman in front doubled up and went down, her hands on her abdomen in a frenzied clutch. A man was quivering against my legs in a death struggle. It came to me that we were at the head of the column. Half a mile of it had disappeared. Where or how I never learned. To this day I do not know what became of that half mile of humanity, whether it was blotted out by some frightful bolt of war, whether it was scattered and destroyed piecemeal, or whether it escaped. But there we were, at the head of the column instead of in its middle, and we were being swept out of life by a torrent of shrieking lead. As soon as death had thinned the jam, Garthwaite, still grasping my arm, led a rush of survivors into the wide entrance of an office building. Here, at the rear, against the doors, we were pressed